Okay, hello and welcome everyone to another Affiliate Summit webinar. We've got a great panel of experts joining us here today, led by Carice, who's the Customer Success Team Lead at PartnerEyes. They'll be discussing their experiences of taking partnership programs global. Now, just before I hand over to Carice to introduce everyone, for anyone new to this webinar platform, I want to make sure you can make the most out of this time. So, firstly, we'll be asking loads of polls throughout the webinar that the panelists will be discussing. These will pop up on your screen throughout, so please do get involved with them when they do. Secondly, this is also a great opportunity to have any of your questions on expanding cross-regionally answered by this panel and learn from their experiences. So if you have any questions, all you need to do is write them in the chat function of the webinar and we'll go through as many as we can at the end. So I'd like to invite all the panelists to turn on their webcams. And I know there's a lot that you guys want to be covering, so I'll hand over to you, Carice, to begin.
Thank you very much, Jamie. So I was just checking I wasn't on mute. Great, fantastic. Hello, everyone, from a very sunny afternoon in London. I'm not sure where you guys are, but it's nice today. Thanks for joining us. As Jamie said, my name's Carice Roach, and I am Customer Success Team Lead for PartnerEyes. And I'm absolutely delighted to be with you today for this webinar and to be joined by our panelists to discuss best practices approaches for taking partnership programs global through cross-regional expansion. So before we begin, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. We have Jennifer Cock, Partnerships Team Lead for Dept, who is going to be giving us a great agency perspective to our conversation today. We also have Roel Overgore, Partnerships and Affiliate Marketing Leads for Philips International. Great to have you with us, Roel. And last but certainly not least, our very own George Gray, Senior Director, Global Client Lead here at PartnerEyes. So to kick things off, I think it would be really good for us to understand the background to each of the setups at your respective organisations or associated organisations for those working in-house or at an agency. So I'm really just going to get stuck in and throw out the first question. So what is the setup of your teams in supporting across regions? So I'm going to go to Jennifer first, throw you in at the deep end.
Yes, of course, of course. Well, at Dept we have one centralized partnerships team who are all working from the Dutch offices. This team actually consists of strong specialists on the partnership level, as well as on the tech side, as on the account management level. In our team, we actually have at this point at least 6 different languages so that we can cover all over the globe. But we also have, from a Dept perspective, localized offices. So based on those offices, we can also get information out of them and input from them on local regulations. And we have access actually to more than a dozen languages. So it actually is basically a localized team that we're working with. To make everything smooth and from one perspective, but we can really get the input from all the local specialists.
Fantastic, great. I'm going to ask the same question over to George as well.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the clients that we work with at PartnerEyes, there's a real mix of setups. Some very similar to the one Jennifer's taken us through. It very much depends on the brand and the type of structure they have internally. So we have some advertisers who have feet on the ground in a number of different regions and markets globally, and they have people managing those markets from those regions. We have some who work with agencies such as Dept who are their resource in local markets, and there's lots of great global agencies out there that can support with that as well. And then some, there's a bit of a hybrid as well when they use the tech providers that they're working with and the service elements that they provide to support in that. So yeah, we definitely see a mix of just those, all-encompassing in-house solutions where they have the benefit of people in market versus also working in a bit of a hybrid as well.
Nice, good stuff. Anything to add to that, Roel? Anything from a Philips perspective?
Yeah, I think for Philips, we indeed work in a bit of a hybrid model. We have for our multi-channel activation, so for all our channels basically, we have what we call activation hubs sitting in each different time zone, so like 5 or 6 across the globe. And within each hub, you have the campaign managers responsible for the hands-on campaign management of that region. But for affiliates specifically, we run all countries and the global program via the Amsterdam hub with a team of specialists, mainly because the focus is on EMEA and Europe, so the time differences are a little bit less of a problem. But we will move to that sort of hub structure in the future.
Nice. Seems like we've got a bit of a mix, but I think it's quite popular having the centralized hub, so we've got a little bit of consistency and control, and then kind of dipping out into these external resource branches, I suppose, for that localized knowledge. So that's fantastic. It would be really interesting, I think, to gauge from our audience today on how they deploy their teams regionally. So I am gonna put it to Affiliate Summit to put out our first poll. So if you guys in the audience want to just vote on that, yeah, what approach do you take? Do you have an in-house team? Do you manage it regionally? Use an agency, or have you not even expanded? And that might be one of the reasons why you're here today. So yeah, we'll take a moment for the attendees to fill that out, and then we'll discuss. Fantastic. Okay, great. Okay, I think it seems like we've got a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest, but quite interesting to see that 21% have not yet expanded. Not sure if any of the other panelists had anything they wanted to pull out of that, but yeah, it's quite interesting, really. Okay, so moving on to our next question, and I'm sure our audience would like to understand how and what methods do you use when you want to localize and when you want to evaluate the potential of a certain market? So what is the research process, or if any research, what do you do? How do you start and say, look, I want to move from A to B, and we're doing a fantastic job in A, and we need to kind of get into this next market. What is it that you guys do? And I'm going to direct that to all of you. Maybe flip it around and start with Roel first.
Sure. Yeah, I think for Philips, as we sort of enter a market from a multi-channel perspective, we don't really decide only from an affiliate perspective if we want to enter a certain market.
Okay.
We sort of we do it anyway. Let's say if we want to enter a certain market.
With the package, it's like
the package. We sort of take over the activation for a certain market by the in-house team. So that makes it a bit, I would say, easier, and we do a bit less research. But in terms of localization, yeah, we really try to sort of start with finding a campaign manager or local campaign experience, so that at least when we move to that market and we copy, let's say, our template or our standard way of working, we do have somebody on the execution that actually knows that market or knows vendors and the publishers there.
Nice, good stuff. And George, I think you've probably had about 10 years overall experience in the industry over time, not to show your age there, sorry. But I mean, the world's kind of definitely got a lot smaller in that time. So I don't know what you've seen in your kind of experience, and how brands and how, I suppose, how we handle it.
I mean, I think the best advice or way in which I've seen brands do this the best way is to utilize all the resources you have at your disposal. So if you have the benefit of working with an agency or a global tech platform, learn from them. And these guys have years of experience in working with brands in multiple regions. So learn from them as much as possible, and they're going to be a great source of resource. And the other thing I'd say is, learn from your competitors as well. If you have a competitor in a region that's been working there for a number of years already, then try and find out what they've been doing in the best possible way you can do that. Because whilst you may not want to do the exact same sorts of things they've been doing to expand into a region, there could be some really great learnings that you can take from that as well.
I think that's really key, and I think there's so much out there. There's gap analysis reports, we've got white papers, there's some fantastic research houses that do a lot, so Forrester, IAB, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think what you said is spot on. And again, Jennifer, anything you would add to that as well from an agency perspective?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with George on this matter, on white papers and stuff, and getting as many information as you can get. Besides getting those information from you guys and other tech providers, we also check, of course, with our localized offices for those informations, and everything we put actually together into a business case. So we actually look at similar countries, making sure that data that we are gathering are actually based on something. So working from a perspective, for example, one of our clients actually expanded towards Eastern Europe recently with Hungary, Romania, those kind of countries, which are on affiliate level completely different than the Western of Europe. And looking at similar countries, like for example, Poland, we can gather conversion rates, kind of partners, what are working, what are not, and include those into a good business case and make sure that our clients are actually aware of what they're getting themselves into. And making sure that it's really an interesting marketing to get to, instead of hopping on everywhere and making sure that we're present everywhere. Brand awareness is also a very big topic on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of trying to get hold of those cultural nuances and making sure you're, executing in the right way, as well as kind of, doing a go-to-market strategy.
Yes.
Fantastic, good stuff. So following on from the research processes, I'm sure part of that is around gauging brand awareness, which, as you mentioned, Jennifer, thank you very much. So I think really my first question, I'm going to direct it straight back at you, is do you vary your strategy for market entry depending on localized brand awareness?
Yes, we do. We actually learned the hard way between all of us that if there's no brand awareness, it's really, really, really hard to get a program off the ground. Based on the partners who do not know the brand, they do not really know what to promote and what to say.
And they don't know how to promote it. Yeah, I would completely agree.
Yeah, and also even when they do, consumers are not looking for those products or for that brand specifically. So even a voucher code or a cashback website is getting really hard to be off the ground, actually, due to that there's no demand yet. So it's really hard to start a partnerships program if there's no localized brand awareness. So yeah, the extra mile is definitely missing from partners to move forward and from the consumers. So yeah.
I think it's a bit of a mix of the whole the marketing mix, really, isn't it? Above the line, below the line, you need to kind of throw everything at it if it's a brand. But yeah, I suppose if any other, George or Raul, did you have anything else to add to that?
I think sort of tying back to the last question, we enter based on sort of a combination of channels and presence. So yes, even if the brand preference or the brand awareness is still a bit low in some countries, we then use other channels to create that kind of awareness, and then affiliate needs to sort of play part in the mix of actually sort of convincing and converting the interest that we generated.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing I'd really want to add to that is if you are entering a market where brand building is an important part of your marketing strategy, certainly for a long period of time, you can't expect to judge performance in the same way you would in those markets where you are a market leader. So changing those metrics that determine success is really important, and whether that's ROI or CPA, you can't expect to have the same level of performance, certainly for the first year, 18 months, however long it is before that brand reaches a level of maturity.
That's a really good tip, George. Thank you.
Maybe one thing to add from that is that we do set certain budget thresholds before we enter, so we don't sort of just enter anywhere where we are going into as a sort of cross-channel team, because in the end, if the budgets are too low or the amount of the volume of the campaign you can run is too low, when you look at resources, cost, and the time basically you invest in it, we had set certain barriers that we say, okay, local budget or volume needs to at least be on this type of level before we fully run it in-house and it actually makes sense to run a program.
Yeah, that's really, I think we're going to cover that slightly later on as well, just in terms of what needs to happen beforehand. But thank you for that. That was really interesting. So I personally, and I think I'd be really interested to learn, and maybe it is the $1 million question for any brands who are yet to enter new markets, but my next question, is have you seen specific partner categories perform well in certain countries or territories? And if so, can you elaborate? I'm going to direct that one straight to you, Rule, from a brand perspective, because it'd be, I think, all the listeners on will be keen to kind of hear any trade secrets.
Yeah, got it. Thinking about that question, I think for, let's say, between the different categories or segments or whatever we name it, I would find that they're actually more similar than not across countries. So, for example, like if a CSS partner or something works very well in Germany, if we started there, then that usually is true to a certain degree for other markets as well. So
Okay.
rather than it varies a lot, we rather sort of see the similarities, which then also allows us to roll it out easier across other markets. So if we have a local success case, we have a certain segment that performs strong, we try to see, okay, how can we make that also as strong in the other countries versus just accepting that it just doesn't work in, a different market.
Nice, good stuff. And I think, we tend to look around cashback and incentive sites always tend to do quite well, especially in the early stages of a program. Has that been your experience? And I'm probably going to direct that over to Jennifer. Would you say that you tend to kind of go and suggest cashback and incentive sites first?
Yeah, especially at the beginning phase of a program, it's really easy to kickstart with those partners if there's a certain demand from a customer. If there's no demand, they're not going to look for a voucher code either. So then it's, not necessarily going to be working well. So yeah, definitely we see that, and especially to capture the demand in the market, we are focusing on those partners as well. But we do believe in a good mix of certain partners, and we do see in certain countries that specific types of partners are really working well. For example, let's take Greece as a market, which is not, well, from our perspective, not always that popular to hop into from our client perspectives, but we do have one client who started there recently, and they are actually quite fond of the comparison websites, and when you have a discount, you at least need to get 50% off, otherwise they will not even promote it. So those are also insights that you can only gather by testing and learning, and keep on testing and learning, and making sure that everything, as Rule said, is a potential, is a possibility to expand to and try and over multiple countries, and then see what works. And then you can get those insights out of it and make sure that you can optimize it per country.
That's great. Would you have anything to add to that, George?
I mean, those are some really great points there. I guess the only other thing I'd maybe mention, from our recent Partner Growth Index report, we've seen a lot across parts of EMEA and the US as well, where content over the last 12, 18 months has grown significantly, and then performance from content partners really improving. And maybe that's, we're all online, we're all absorbing more and more content, we're spending more time on our laptop, so I guess that makes sense. But that's something we've seen a lot of recently.
Yeah, definitely. I think some from my experience as well in working customer success, influencers, and it's probably obvious to say, but influencers work on mobile, so the performance on mobile that we've seen across JPAC has been astronomical. And the fact that a lot of sort of Chinese specific social platforms such as WeChat and stuff, that type of content does really well. So if you as your brand can adapt to that and tap into that, that can really, really help and be the difference between sort of market failure and market success, really. Fantastic. So moving on, we've established specific partner types suited to each region, but I'm now going to move on to kind of from what I just said about mobile. So do you vary your mobile strategy per market? And I'm going to direct that again to you, Jennifer. I'd be keen to hear how you're seeing your clients approach this, or how you're advising your clients on mobile strategies.
Yes. Let's start off with that we advise our clients always to be mobile first as a standard, but we also look at consumer behavior. If we see, for example, in a country that, let's say 75% of the conversions within the affiliate program is coming via desktop, of course, mobile is a big pillar and it can be the future still, but it's also important not to forget about the desktop part. Things that we're doing is, for example, making sure that all the banners are in HTML5 so that it will be responsive. But we share also vector logos with our partners to make sure that they can work with these sizes as well. And besides advising our clients, we are also advising our partners to make sure that they are getting optimized for mobile. So, for example, looking at fonts that are easily readable at mobile, but also not too long paragraphs in articles, image placements. Yep. So we are really making it more standardized per market for mobile. But if you look at our clients overall at this point, if you're looking more on the tech side, besides on that we're advising them to be mobile first, we actually see that as our clients are, I would say 70–80% are just starting off with affiliate marketing and do not have a new or an existing program yet. That these are actually in the tech phase of app installs, in-app tracking, and those kind of topics. And that's basically because it's a new program, or throughout the years it has got a lack of focus on affiliate marketing and they're now catching up. So we're actually advising our clients as well to focus on the in-app tracking, as it's also actually creating a customer success phase with your results, and making sure that your existing customers are also happy and also being motivated to buy again. Yeah, so that's actually how we're looking at it, but it's all based on learning and testing in those purchase activities.
Yeah, you make a really good point about the partners. I mean, you know, it's all well and good optimizing your own site to be mobile friendly, but if the partner site doesn't look or you know sing the part, then the click-through rates it's just not gonna be there. So that's a very good point.
Yeah, exactly, because that's really affecting the results in the end.
Well, exactly. Yeah, that's the start of the journey, isn't it, really?
Exactly.
So before we direct this next question to the panelists, I'm going to move on to our second poll. And I want to kind of take the pulse of the audience on this next question. So do you alter your commission strategies to adhere to specific regions? Nice and easy, yes or no? And we're going to ask that to the panelists as well afterwards, so you'll get their insight as well. Okay, fantastic. So we've got the results, and it looks like 71% do, 29% don't. So not, you know, there is a clear difference there, but still some people kind of using sort of a centralized commission structure. So I'd be interested to see what vertical that was across, if it's similar verticals, or if, you know, if it's something that is quite localized. So that's quite interesting to see. I'm going to kind of fire that question off to the panelists, and sorry, Raul, you keep getting all the brand questions, but I'm going to go to you first, if that's okay. So, you know, how do you look at your commission structure per region?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's interesting to see that like 30% doesn't seem to alter commission strategy. I'm so curious to maybe learn something about that as well. We do try to, first of all, we do try to align commissions a bit between countries. Also, as let's say from a budget and target perspective and return on investment expectation, we don't want to have huge differences in what affiliate can bring in one country to another. But we set a certain standards. But each campaign manager is always allowed to sort of deviate from whatever basic we put in place, as he feels, to just improve performance. And that can be the commission rate, right? Like the height of the rate, but also the type of the model. So whether we do CPS only, or, you know, another market is way more used to working with tenancy deals and CPC. So also sort of the type of commission is up to the local or to the expertise in that market.
Nice. How about you, Jennifer? What about in terms of the brands that you look after? Does it vary quite a lot? Does a certain vertical tend to adapt, or, you know, how do you and your team tackle this?
We actually always work from one baseline based on the margins, and that can differ per country. So if you're looking at the margins in for example, the fashion branch, we can see quite a lot of differences within the Nordics, looking at to the Netherlands, the UK, USA, etc. So based on those, that's actually our main starting point. And then actually everything that Roel also mentioned, looking at the return on investment and those kind of topics, what do you really want to get out of those countries? We include that all into the commission strategies. And depending per client, for us, we really see big differences. But one thing we also alter too is the type of partner. And that depends a little bit on per country and per client. Some clients really have a more focus on upper funnel than lower funnel, or the other way around. But we really find it very valuable to really look at the worth of a partner, and not necessarily if it's a voucher code or a cashback, but more within the lower funnel. If we have the category cashback, which cashback partner brings in the most value, and alter the commission strategy based on that. So we have also quite individualist commission structures for at least the top partners for our clients. And KPIs, for example, that we include in here are, for example, from Google Analytics, like assisting conversions, first interaction conversions, what is really their worth and what do they contribute to the full funnel, and base those commissions on, on those strategies, on those KPIs.
Nice. It sounds like it's quite a good technique to sort of work backwards on what it is you have, what it is you want to achieve, and then implement, rather than, you know, fire out a guess, I suppose.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. That was Jennifer. I'm sure lots of people are going to be wanting to get their hands on your black book at the end of this, your go-to-market strategy. I'm going to move on to our next topic. And when I am working with clients here at PartnerEyes, a big topic that we're talking about and people that are conscious of, is fraud. So I am curious, and I want to kind of put this to the panel. Are you more cautious of fraud in some countries more so than others? So I am going to ping that over to Jennifer first, if that's okay.
Sure. Of course, we're more cautious of fraud in some countries, but also in some branches more than others. We noticed that there are a few branches who are a little bit more shady, if you can call it like that, than others, and also attract different kinds of partners. For example, partners who are intending to misgive information to the customers, who are actually using some medical information, for example, in their own advantage to sell, instead of really giving the right information. You can also look to fraud as, for example, advertising in Google while it's not allowed by the terms and conditions. I'm not that cautious of those kind of frauds. Of course, if it's in the terms and conditions, you want to handle on it. But for those things, you have quite easily some tools that you can implement, for example, like brand verity, ad police, who you can use for it. And then it's also, I think, the trick to be not too cautious, because then you're going to eliminate partners upfront already who you would think might be shady, but who can also bring in quite a lot of value. So it's finding the right mix. Of course, we're cautious, but there are tools and tips and tricks to work around it.
Nice. George, anything to add to that from your kind of previous experiences and current experience on, you know, in terms of different markets? And I suppose PartnerEyes, we have such a breadth, don't we? So yeah, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think with the number of global clients we have, this is a big topic for all of them, as you mentioned, Karis. And the important thing here is having the tech stack and the tools at your disposal to monitor this. And everything that gets flagged might not be deemed as fraud, but as long as you're aware of what is happening and what partners are doing and how they're promoting you, and tools such as brand verity are a really important aspect of capturing that. Then you can go into expansion into other markets with a bit more comfort and a bit more ease, that you're going to be able to have your partners promoting you in the right way. But it can't be underestimated how important it is to have the right technology in place to capture all that information.
Absolutely, good stuff. Anything to add to that, Roel?
Yeah, maybe as we as we are the manufacturer that sell the stuff ourselves, right? We can also see a lot of data and use that data automatically on, let's say, returns or repeat purchases or like fraud based on the customer data that we have.
Nice.
Rather than, you know, if it's a publisher performing certain fraud.
Yeah.
I would say we have similar fraud checks and detection tools in the like the ones that were mentioned in place. So it's not that we really differ between countries, but we focus, I think, automatically more on the markets where the volume is the highest. So even if, let's say, Italy has 2 times as much fraud as France, if in France we have a program that's 10 times larger, we still focus on France to lower the. So yeah.
Nice, good stuff. And I suppose as these things happen, you know, what processes do you put in place for course corrections when there are unforeseen challenges? So I suppose that's when we do enter a new market. Is there anything that you guys would put in place, you know, if things don't go quite as originally planned? And I'll ask that to Jennifer first.
I think it's always very important and necessary to have a plan B. So always be sure that when you're going to enter a new market, or when you know upfront this might be getting tricky, that you already have a plan in place. We need to adapt all the time. If it's on budget level, if it's on partner level, if it's on strategy level, that actually doesn't really matter. If anything changes, we need to adapt to it. And the most important thing is to evaluate the current situation. What has gone differently, looking at what you expected and what the results are. Is it really an result thing, like it's not enough revenue, the ROAS is too low? Is it that partners are more fraudulent? Is it that you cannot get enough partners? It always has a different approach on how we do things. And we have certain processes in place, also literally written out, so that everyone can always follow the right process and always be consistent in following a process. But it basically gets onto a point to evaluate and replan. And depending on what the matter is and what the topic is, it's always good to have these processes in place to be prepared, actually, if these things happen. When these things happen, it's never on a good timing. It's always right before the weekend or at the end of the day when you're actually planning to do something fun. So it's always good to just have a plan in place, and plan B that you can always rely on when it's necessary.
That's really good advice. That's really good. Anything from you, Roel?
Yeah, I would love to get those plan Bs. Because my answer actually was that I would say like unforeseen challenges usually require unforeseen processes. Like we don't have a process for something that we haven't foreseen as a challenge, let's say. So to be honest, we usually tackle them as they arise. And I think like, you know, deviations versus target or budget, or, you know, something with a specific publisher or tracking issues, stuff like that, I would say is part of normal operations, right? And campaign managers should indeed have a certain standard of how to handle that. But like bigger challenges, for example, we're now adjusting our affiliate program structure to reflect the fact that Philips has sold a giant part of the business, which is domestic appliances. So like vacuum cleaners, espresso machines, etc. So we basically need to transform the program into a split program that can serve both personal health and domestic appliances, which is a huge challenge, but something we could not foresee and don't have any process for. So it's really something new. So I would say how we react to it is more that we try to form like a project group on a certain big challenge with dedicated people who are tackling it. Because I think the biggest how would you say it, challenge could be that nobody takes responsibility for, let's say, a new challenge or a new issue, right? and it gets sort of thrown around within the company. So I would say create a project team that has ownership to tackle the challenge, and then you'll get there.
Yeah,
I agree with you, Roel. If you look at the responsibility within a team and within these types of challenges, it's insanely important that people know who are responsible and accountable for things. Within Depth, we always work with the 4I principle as well. So when you are having these kind of challenges, by just chatting with your colleagues within the team for cases to back up each other in difficult situations, it's always very helpful. So besides getting the responsibility and accountability in place, it's also helping you guys lift up the team further and making sure that everyone can work with a new way of work, get on a new course, and that the team is on board. So it creates some kind of unity as well.
Work as a team and don't panic, basically.
Exactly. Never panic.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and I think, George, you can probably we could probably answer this together, but you and I have worked together for a number of years, and in terms of working with clients and when markets possibly or programs haven't performed as well as they could have, there's certain things that we can put in place. So luckily PartnerWise has got a very flexible commercial structure, so we do make it really easy for our clients to have a bit of a test and learn process first. So obviously kind of you only pay for the success, I suppose, and we just try and make sure that we are, as a team and a tech team, and your kind of tech consultants are as flexible and adaptable as possible, so we can flip programs, we can turn them around, we can create new ones, we can switch off commissions, etc. And I think we've just gone through the world's biggest sort of change, I suppose, and we had to really adapt very quickly and change a lot of things about our business model, and it does change things and it changes the trajectory, but we're all still here now, and I think it's kind of you live and you learn, don't you? But if there's anything you wanted to add to that, George, from a PZ perspective.
Yeah, no, perfectly put. I mean, the last 12-18 months has been the definition of unforeseen challenges, isn't it, for all of us? And with my travel hat on, it's still going on when brands are looking at local rules in different parts of EMEA or the world when it comes to travel. That's something that's going to be going on for quite some time now, and being able to be quick at adapting to that, launching programs at short speeds when changes do come into place in local laws is really important. And similarly, when things have gone backwards over the last year, being able to adapt to that really quickly is really important. So having that infrastructure in place is vital.
Definitely. Great. So moving on, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to jump to the next question. So how are you guys anticipating response to data restrictions in terms of the new updates for third-party cookie tracking and wider data protection laws? I think everyone's obviously very aware of what's going on. I think there's a lot of people in the audience keen to understand how people are tackling that. So yeah, I'm going to put that to the panel. What are you guys doing about ITP, iOS 14.5, anything that you're doing in terms of your clients? I'll probably put that to you, Jennifer, first.
At Depth, we have our own data team who are actually also helping out on our affiliate tracking issues like these. They actually help us with consulting towards our clients and partners to make sure that everything is up to date. We never advise third-party cookie tracking because we want to get in as many data as possible. So we always go direct for the server-to-server implementation or the first-party tracking. Prefer the server-to-server with an API connection, and to get it as real-time as possible and make sure that the data is as best tracked as possible. We also notice that quite a lot of our clients are, as it takes quite a little bit more time to implement, not always that keen to wait on it. So they, in most cases, go for the first party. But we're actually really happy with our data team internally, who are actually on top of every new regulation and informing us at the right spots and making sure that our clients are actually up to date as well. But yeah, nice. Definitely no third-party cookie tracking anymore for us.
Well, I think it's going that way, isn't it? But before I dig myself a hole, how about you, Roel?
Yes. No, I think same. I think it's critical to have the right expertise involved, right? Luckily, also on our end, we have a team focused on these type of things, but there's tag and tracking in general. So also here we move to first-party tracking, the API-based connection. So that makes us sort of future-proof. But I think as a sort of an advice, I would say try to involve your tech team or your tech colleagues. And what you can do from affiliate perspective is, I think, create clarity on what's in place currently, because also that can differ from per market. At least for us, we took over a lot of programs that were locally run and we took them over in-house. So there was also a variety on tag implementations locally. So sort of, I think what we can do is create the clarity on what's in place in each market, and then have the experts come up with, okay, where do we need to go to?
I think that's really key, and it's definitely what you hit the nail on the head there. Just, it's not something that you're going to be able to do by yourself. Like, definitely try and get that help from that help from the team. And I think your average day-to-day sort of affiliate manager, user, whatever, is I mean, I certainly am not going to be implementing my own API tracking anytime soon. But you definitely have people on your team somewhere that will be able to help you, and it's just trying to kind of get that. And obviously, PartnerEyes, we have a vast amount of resource as well that can help people. So we're definitely the same wavelength as Dept as well. We would always advise the alternative non-third party tracking. But George, was there anything you wanted to add to that as well?
I mean, I think as two PartnerEyes clients, Raul and Jennifer probably answered that better than even I could. So no, yeah, it's absolutely spot on from what they both said. And it's good that they are saying that, so that's great to hear.
I know, right? We are doing something right, George.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm gonna jump to our final poll. So another, well, it's kind of discuss this topic, and hopefully the Affiliate Summit guys can ping that up. So there we go. What tracking practices are you guys using? So if you guys just want to vote on that, you don't know what you're using, that's fine. We're using third party, first party, server. Server is the same as API, in case anyone didn't know. But yes, be keen to see the results. Fantastic. So great, huge amount using server. That is wonderful. I think if we'd asked this question maybe even a year or two ago, that number would have been much lower. And then you've got 27% still using first party, which is kind of the next one up, and 7% who are using third party. So fingers crossed we can get that 7% over to the server to server before long. Cool. So I'm going to kind of move to the final and maybe the gold star question, which I really would love to get the group's thoughts on. So how do you operate a global or a cross-country partnership program successfully? So if you had one top tip or one or two top tips, what would they be? I'm going to go to Raul first.
I can only choose one.
That's fine. Go for it.
I'm going to cheat a bit and do two then, I think. I think the first one, which I think is the most important then, is to create and share a global vision and a clear overview of where the global program is going to and why, right? And why that benefits, let's say, the company goals. Because I think market know-how and affiliate know-how can and maturity as well can vary wildly, right, across regions and markets, and also across the stakeholders you are working with. So I think if you have sort of a like a Bible that says, okay, this is where we want to go to as a channel, and this is why it benefits your goals, then it's a lot easier to get the right people on board, the right participation from the markets, the right budgets, etc. And if you have that and everybody's on board, I would say have a standard for everything that you can standardize. So even though if you really need to deviate from the standard per market, right, to optimize, I think it's always good to have one, let's say, template for commissions, assets, reporting, your program structure, your KPIs. Just have something that's standard so you can move to a new market, you can expand quite fast, and then start localizing.
Nice, good stuff. Jennifer, any top tips, plural or just singular?
Yes, of course. I think that my tips are actually quite, matching with rules. I would say look at partners who are in your top tiers and make sure that you're aware if they work cross-regional. We see quite a lot of partners that we work with on long-term relationships that can be a really good asset in other countries as well. We have partners who are we working with, for example, in the Netherlands, who are also active in Belgium, Germany, UK, France, and other big markets in Europe, and sometimes even USA. And I believe that if you already have a long-term partnership with these partners, that it can be an easy, quick win for the other markets. So I would definitely focus on that one. Make sure that everything that you can standardize in localized languages, that you will do it. For example, recruitment emails, but also program descriptions, terms and conditions. Make sure that there's nothing that you can mix with, actually, that they're not aware of certain things. We actually launched a couple weeks ago a program in 24 countries, and we actually standardized every program description, every terms and condition in those localized languages to make sure that we always know that partners at least can understand what the regulations are. So that would definitely be another tip for more smooth management to run the programs. And I would say if you look at your team on the partnership level, create diversity. Make sure you have different cultural backgrounds so you can manage all different countries, also on the cultural level, different personalities, different knowledge levels from junior to senior. Because working with a diverse team, make sure that you can always handle the question from partners and from advertisers. And that's what everyone notices. So that's actually the baseline of the partnership program. And if I can smoothen in, and the tagline from that is be better together. And I think that's also the basics of our partnerships team. By diversifying, we can be better together and create a better partnership with our clients, but also with our partners. So I would definitely give that as a tip as well. Diversify, not be too senior, not too junior, not just one background, but combine.
That's fantastic. Yeah, do your homework and lean on what you've already got. I think that's very good tip. Anything from you, George, to round it off?
Yeah, no, I think there's some really great points there. I think the only thing I'd add to that is around, as early as possible, define the structure that you're going to implement to manage this, so that you've got a clear view as to where responsibilities lie, and where possible, have feet on the ground in the local markets that you want to work on, whether that be for a short time through an agency or a technology provider in the service that they offer, or if you have the flexibility to have local support within your own organization in that market. It can't be underestimated how important having that local knowledge is going to be. So define that early and get the right resource in place.
Nice, lovely. Well, that's fantastic, guys. Thank you so much for everyone's input. We've probably got about 5-10 minutes, I think that's right, for questions. So if anyone in the audience wants to ask myself, George, Jennifer, or Rule a question, then do ping it through and we'll do our best to answer.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts and experience. So we do actually have a couple of questions already come through, which we'll go through now just before kind of we close up. So the first question is just run away from me then. There, 1 second. It's kind of, how do you work with commission-based affiliate marketing versus fixed fee collabs?
I can answer that one if you don't mind. We have this situation on a daily basis, on second basis actually. It's what we always do is create the commission structure based on the margins, but also keep some wiggle room so that you can always make sure that your cost of sale, for example, is 15%. You want to use 15% of the revenue to spend actually in the program. keep, for example, the commission structure also based on competitors at 7, for example, and then you have at least 8% wiggle room to create edit for fixed fees. So then you always be safe, always be at your maximum cost of sale. Do not go over it. But that's, in my opinion, the most safe way to do it. I really like this question. So sorry for hopping in.
Yeah, first of all, we reserve some part of the budget, right, for tenancy, so that you have that room. And what was I going to add to it? Yeah, it's also more necessary sometimes in certain moments of the year, right? So also balance out when you might need more tenancy, for example, during the Black Friday period or holiday season, stuff like that. That you are certainly getting your placements and your volume, and you take that into account when you budget. You make your budget proposals.
Perfect. We've also got one more question come through, which I think we've got plenty of time to cover. This one's focused more on kind of Google shopping ads, but I'll go through it, and whoever's best placed, stick your hand up and we'll reach out to you. What's your point of view on letting fashion aggregators work with Google shopping ads if you're an e-com business yourself? Me being hesitant is because we would both compete in Google shopping with the same feed. Anyone want to jump in and take that?
Yeah, I can answer, maybe not per se from a fashion perspective, of course, but from a Philips perspective. We started this using CSS partners, and we basically monitored what was happening. The first thing that we saw that it is not competing with each other. It can work in a way technically that you can exclude it from each other. So I think that's sort of a how do you say it, a risk which wasn't really actually a risk for us. And then at the same time, we combine the reporting from the Google Shopping partners we have via affiliate with our normal Google Shopping reporting from let's say our search team. So then we have the combined view of what our coverage is and our return is. So I would say that the risk in competition is not really there, and at least for us. And have a joint view on reporting together with search team.
Yeah, I agree with Roel on this one. And what I would like to add on this is, at the end of the day, it's better for your own revenue stream to be present at that stage with your own shopping feed and your affiliate partners instead of the competitors. So that's all. It can also be an advantage. It's not always a risk to take. And the experience that Roel is sharing at this point at not seeing that big of a difference, we have the same thing. We do not see that big of a difference. We had one time that it was like 2 cents in difference, but it was also a sale period. So that could also be trend conflicting. So it's always good to keep in mind that you have a stable period of time that you're testing this with, to make sure that you're not basing your results on kind of trends that normally aren't there. So that's another tip that I would like to give when you're going to test this, to make sure that you have everything in place.
Yeah, and I think also a way to eliminate, let's say, other influences is, especially if you're running multi-country program, do it in one country and don't do it in the other country, because then you can definitely see the upside because you're doing it in one country, or the downside if it's that case.
Perfect. So I think we've actually got time to take this final question that's come through. So cross-regional is one thing, but how do you work with the wider marketing team in your organizations? Is there much overlap?
Sorry, can you repeat that one?
Yeah, I can do. So cross-regional is one thing, but how do you work with the wider marketing team in your organizations? Is there much overlap?
So would that be with like SEO teams, branding teams, that sort of thing? I would imagine so.
I would imagine so, yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to chip in here as well, from having worked client side previously as well, and we work very much hand in hand with our paid search, our programmatic teams, SEO. The impact that their activity can have on your own performance is massive at times. So, certain testing that might be happening in the paid search team or brand campaigns that the display team might be doing are going to have a hand-in-hand response on your own, affiliate or partner marketing performance. So, I think it's really important to make sure you have a clear view of what testing is being done across each channel, and you're building that into your own reporting as well.
Perfect.
Yeah. From a depth. Sorry, Roel. From a depth perspective, we can look at it at two ways. Within depth, we actually work closely together with our SEO team, with our content team, data, SEA, but also a brand and advertising area actually, who are also focusing on influencers, but more the engaging side of things. You can actually easily work together and make sure you can use each other's tools. For example, we use SEO tools as well for some partner recruitment. So you can also mix and combine things. When we look at our client side, we actually see really good results from some of our clients who are working closely with their country teams, also working, for example, on influencer basis, and actually pass on influencers towards the affiliate program who are, for example, not big enough for direct collaborations. But within the affiliate program, it's really working really well. For example, TikTokers, YouTubers, we see everything come across, and that it's actually generating revenue as well. So you can look at it from our perspective at two perspectives, but either way, it's always a very important topic, I would say, to engage with the other marketing channels and marketing teams.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, that's the same. Same for Philips. We have, I think, in the sort of the agile method, the daily stand-ups, and the affiliate team is actually not a team that sits with each other, let's say, as a core team around the table, like also virtually, of course, now, but more within a team that's multi-channel. So let's say an affiliate campaign manager within that's responsible for the German market. Their direct colleague is the search campaign manager, social campaign manager, programmatic, etc. And together they are responsible for that market. And together they should sort of see who's doing what, how can we benefit from each other, and so on. So not in silos, but really. Yeah.
Fantastic. And that actually brings us to the end of the time that we have. So I just want to kind of say a really big thank you to everyone who's being involved and kind of sharing your thoughts and experiences. And a big thank you to everyone who asked a question. I've posted a link in the chat box to a quick survey. It should only take less than 30 seconds to fill out, and I'd appreciate it if anyone watching would take their time. You'll also be sent that link about an hour afterwards. And finally, we'll also confirm that kind of the recording will be available to everyone 48 hours after the webinar. And again, you'll be sent a link on how to access that. But that's it from us. Thank you everyone again for taking part, and for everyone who was watching.
Thanks guys, take care.